Here it goes. Oh. All right. This little article starts off, noted area physician dies at 78. Dr. John Olson, 78, of Main Street, physician in the area for more than 40 years and Western Franklin District Medical Examiner for 25 years, died at the Farron Memorial Hospital Monday. He had been admitted earlier in the day. 1 year earlier, reporting for a mandatory physical for the AMA, American Medical Association, he was told by Dr. Callow, a noted thoracic surgeon in Boston, John, go home, make out your arrangements. You have an inoperable thoracic aneurysm, so you have about a year to live. Earlier that fateful day, he woke up with pain in his back between his shoulder blades. Of course, he knew exactly what was happening. So he called the ambulance, no sirens please, and proceeded, without waking my mother, went down the stairs and out the door to the ambulance. The rest is history. So when he was a male nurse, he went to work in Hoosick Tunnel, on the job they called it, to build the Whitingham Dam. That is where he met my mother from Reachboro, Vermont. It was told to me much later that they used to go down under the bridge and drink grappa. Can you believe that? It was an Italian town. On returning from a volunteer physician stay in Vietnam, he met my mother and friend Paul Mary in Hawaii for a short R&R. Judy, what have you got to say about that you heard from your mother?
Just that it was a wonderful trip.
Okay, all right. On returning home after a few days, he was operating at the Farron and dropped an instrument. Unheard of for him. Dr. Thomas said, John, you should go home. On the way home, he hit a house on Maple Street and subsequently had a stroke. So he recovered partially, so my mother had to drive him to medical examiner visits and calls and take notes. And he loved that particular aspect of this, of his life, being medical examiner. He had to give up being a rep for a few days, Republican that is, and to become a Democrat. So Judge Sam Blasberg told him to do it, so it worked, so that he could become medical examiner. After leaving the job, and he and my mother returned to Boston, and he went to medical school after getting married. My mother, after living in the city for a while, certainly didn't want to come back to that one-horse town, but as always, he prevailed. Of note, back when he was an intern with a buddy, they were having dinner across the street from a noted bar and restaurant. They looked out and saw flames and rushed to the scene. The doors were locked and the people inside were screaming with terror, terrified because they couldn't get out. My father and his buddy were the first medical people to arrive at the noted Coconut Grove Hotel in 1942. 492 people died that night. So that was just an interesting part of his history. And let's see, what else do I have? He was born in Bath, Maine, the son of Bernard and Fanny Waddell there. And he also had a sister who died of diphtheria when she was 12. He graduated from Boston City Hospital and was a male nurse. And that's when he went up to Hoosick Tunnel on the job, and he was there for a few years and then came back to Boston. He graduated from the Boston College of Physicians and Surgeons in 1936 after interning at Boston City Hospital, Forest Hills Hospital, and Maplewood Hospital in Malden. He did graduate work at Harvard Medical School, and then he came to Monroe in 37, opened an office, and in 38, he moved to Colrain. He volunteered, oh, I said that already. He was past president of the Farron Memorial Staff and a member of the AAFP, Massachusetts Medical Society, and the Franklin Medical Society. He joined the staff of Franklin County Public Hospital in 49 and was named honorary member in 76. He was a 50-year-old member of the Masons of Jacksonville. He also was a Colrain Board of Health, had been water commissioner. He served as school physician for the Mohawk Trail Regional High School football team. He was a director of the Mohawk Valley Medical Center, and also at one time was physician for the state police at the Shelburne Falls Barracks. He was medical director of the Chapel Hill Nursing Home, Holyoke, and the Poet Seat Nursing Home, Greenfield. He was also the founder of the Colrain Fire Department and the ambulance. So, at the time of his passing, a lot of people wrote in about comments that they'd had relationships with him over the years, but this one was particularly moving. And the title is Doctor's Passing Marks, End of Medical Era. The passing of Dr. John Olson is really the end of an era in America and in medicine. People will never know how brutal life was for these country practitioners in the hill towns. We did not have the roads that exist now, nor were they plowed in the winter. Snow tires were unheard of, so your winter equipment consisted of chains, shovel, and sand. Dr. Olson would get a call from up in the hills, drive as far as he could by automobile, and with his medical equipment on his back, would trudge another 2 or 3 miles to the patient. I have seen his hands chapped and bleeding from many of these night sojourns. Medicine was a great deal different in those early days. There were no insurance policies, and all the general practitioners of the era had their houses filled with potatoes, eggs, and apples. Some of the homes were so inaccessible that neighbors would help the local doctors by putting the patient on a window shutter as a litter and carrying them miles to the doctor's car that was then used to be pulled out of drifts by horses. When I first came to Greenfield 40 years ago, we had to buy all our instruments, and I could not afford a baby cystoscope. That's how you look into the bladder. Dr. Olson gave me one for my birthday so that I could take care of infants' urological problems. I shall be eternally grateful to him for when I went into the armed service, he looked after my family as though it was his own. John enjoyed hunting, fishing, and bogging for native wild orchids. Once when John, Mrs. Flo, and I came out of a bog, we found ourselves in a man's yard and he met us with a shotgun and a dog. We introduced ourselves and told him we were searching for wild orchids. He said, "Hell, the only place you can find those is Times Square." John knew he had a fatal illness and knew that his days were numbered, but he handled death stoically and with equanimity. It's as hard for doctors to die as for other people. Our hill towns will never be the same with all these dedicated country practitioners gone, and America will never see their like again. Spencer C. Flo, MD, long-time surgeon in Greenfield, but later passed.
Who never wore a mask or gloves when he
That's
took
right.
care of people.
My father didn't either.
I know.
So, I guess now,
Tell about the fence.
oh yeah, the fence. Where'd it go? It was right here.
Well, then just tell about it.
No, I want to show it.
Well,
Oh, here it is.
and it can,
Sometime in the 50s, a young boy, I don't know how old he was, fell out of an apple tree, so to speak, and landed on a picket fence. The picture of that is in this catalog I'm gonna pass around later, you can look at it. But the picket went in his back, just under the skin, and he was brought to the office on a board, a ladder or something, and my father took him to the hospital and operated. And in this book, it shows them removing this out of his back. This was the picket.
Same stack?
Yeah, yeah. So, with all that said, I now will open it up to anybody that has,
Are you gonna talk about the tonsil chair? Someone's
Oh, the
covered it up.
tonsil chair. Tonsils.
that was in here, didn't I say that?
No,
Yeah,
no.
Not yet, but somebody put their coat over it.
Yeah, she did.
I did,
Oh, you did, okay.
I did. So, yes, during the time that he lived in this house and acted as physician for the whole town, and Marion can vouch for that, he also took out tonsils, probably 4 at a time, maybe once a month, every other month, whatever that was.
4 kids, not 4
Yeah. 4 kids. So when the patient came to have his tonsils out, he would sit in this chair, which was a kitchen chair that my father remedied to be the tonsil chair. And so they sat in it with the head back, and Marion would drip ether into a cone that went over the nose. Pretty soon, the patient would be asleep, and he would reach in there with some kind of an instrument, snake out the tonsil, and then up behind the nose, he'd get the adenoids, and then he'd put the patient over his shoulder, up the back stairs to bed, where the patient stayed overnight with a nurse in attendance until the next morning. And that was it. He did about 4 at a time, once a month. So I guess that was all I had to say about that. So now, I would like to hear from any of you who have special stories to tell regarding this important physician and this important night, where we can further hear what my father did for somebody or didn't do, okay? Anybody?
I think you should tell the story about Mary and him getting her to water ski.
1 minute, Jack.
Okay.
All right, he had Mary Goodell, and she, at a very young age, had to have her whole hip amputated because she had cancer and it had spread all the way up in here. It wasn't just below the knee, above the knee or anything. It was the whole leg and up into the socket. So after a while, when she got used to being able to function as she grew older with this disease, whatever problem, he decided that she needed to learn how to water ski. So he took her up to Whitingham every week, and they would start their lessons in water skiing, and she became very, very adept at it, as Judy will say. Didn't you see her do
Yeah,
it?
she's amazing,
Amazing.
amazing.
My boys were young, so her prosthesis would be under the cabin in the boat, and they were just agog. What is that? How can she be out there? There's the leg, blah, 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 blah. And it was very informative to them. So anyway, she went on to become an avid skier in Special Olympics. And she went on to achieve certain national awards and whatnot through her winter skiing, but it all came from learning to water ski when she was a young girl. So there was that.
Wonderful.
So, Jack.
Anybody else?
Now, to follow up on the skiing, when he took him down on the Lionsville flat and hitched him behind his Jeep and pulled him on skis
That was
around.
her.
Oh, yeah.
That was
He pulled them on water skis behind the Jeep down
behind
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't that you, Joe?
No, not me.
Well, I thought it was you out there riding his Jeep spinning around.
No, he drove the Jeep. I just watched.
Jack.
Jack,
Yes.
are you ready?
I guess so.
You wanna come forward so you can see what you wrote?
We have a traffic jam.
Jim can make it.
I'll let him sit here where the light is so he can read his notes.
It'll take his tonsils out.
Pull that back here.
If I sit in that chair, does anybody gonna take my tonsils out?
You still have one?
No, I don't.
All
I
right,
can put it back in.
then you're okay.
Okay. I'm gonna stand up.
All right.
Okay.
Go
You wanna
ahead.
sit down?
No,
I'll stand in the doorway.
all right.
You don't mind my back? I'll
No.
talk loud. We knew Doc fairly well. My name is Jack Carlin. I'm from Bernardston. I now live in New York State. I married Louis Pratt's daughter, Elaine. If any of you know, they're from Bernardston, and we've been married to be 65 years in June. And you gotta know she's an angel.
Good beginning.
I come from good stock. My mother was a nurse in Franklin County for many, many years. And I
She Esther
can remember those hard times back years ago when Mom was making $50 a week and Dad was making $50 a week, and I was going to Mount Hermon. That was only $100 a year. But you know, we got along, and I think we had more than we have now. Doc had a boat, well, you were talking about the amount of money and the things he was doing and the fact that he got paid in potatoes and things like that. Well, I gotta tell you, I'm a little out of sequence here, but we got a lot more friendly after Elaine and I got married. We got to know Doc better, and I was running a small boat company down in Salem, Massachusetts, and we lived in Marblehead. And Doc and
Carolyn.
Doc and Carolyn came down to spend some time with us. Now, anybody been to Marblehead?
Yes.
Well, there are no junk boats in Marblehead. And usually, well, that's where they make the 12-meter racers and things like that, and all these beautiful yachts and everything. And if I can regress a little bit, Doc's boat, I'm going back now 60 years. I think Doc's boat was a kit from Buffalo, New York.
That's right,
That sound right?
yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we're doing good. And Whitingham Dam. Before Elaine and I were married, we went up to Whitingham Dam. And I'm not sure, it might have been another girl, but anyway, at Whitingham Dam, I saw this boat. Any of you ever see Doc's boat?
Yes.
Well, what he did is this company made a cabin cruiser, but Doc didn't buy all the parts. He bought the hull, and he put a great big, I think it was an Evinrude motor.
Oh, yeah, but he put the Studebaker top on
Well,
top.
that's what, don't steal my thunder.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I'm
Evinrude,
looking out on
Evinrude.
Whitingham. At this time, I really didn't know Doc. And I said, what the hell is that? And they said, well, that's Doc Olson's boat. And I said, well, the cabin is off a Studebaker Starlight Cruiser put on backwards so that the rear window of the Studebaker is the windshield of the boat. And he also had this boat, I would guess it was 18 to 20 feet.
16.
Yeah? Well, all right, 16 feet, but he had a big motor on it.
Yeah,
Yeah, he had a big, I think it was an Evinrude.
it wasn't Evinrude.
Yeah, I remember that. He also had a bunch of pieces of wood in the cabin that was a sail rig in case the motor quit. And if anybody in this room thinks that Carolyn enjoyed going out in that boat, you gotta be nuts. She didn't wanna go, and he was fearless. He was absolutely fearless to the point of almost criminal. And he came down to Marblehead with this thing. I wasn't getting around to the money. The longer you use the boat, the more it wears out. And one of the things that was wearing out on his boat was a trailer hitch. And so the boat at its own timing would sometimes become disentangled with the ball on the back of the Jeep. Right? Yeah. So we shimmed it with pieces of beer can to take up the slack, the slop, so that it could tighten it so it wouldn't. So here he comes to Marblehead where all these beautiful yachts and boats and 12-meter sloops and everything. And he comes down and he's coming to, now we lived on Gingerbread Hill in Marblehead. And the roads are like a worm in Marblehead. And Doc he can't find where he's going. And he's going around and around the circle in downtown Marblehead. And occasionally I think the boat was coming off. The cops finally came over and threatened to arrest him if he went around that circle one more time. So anyway, and I guess the cop helped him and he got up to our house. And we partied a little. It was a good visit. We were doing good till we got to the sweet corn. And in the sweet corn, we come back to the money. I looked over at Doc and his two front teeth were right out like this, sticking right out, straight out. He glued his teeth in. And the sweet corn, Lynn didn't cook it enough or something, I don't know. Well, he was so embarrassed he stopped drinking for the rest of the trip. And so that was my experience with him in Marblehead. And I just had a cataract operation, and these are fishing glasses. And these are magnify, and this is ultraviolet, which is good for the new eyes, but these are magnifiers. And so until I get my new prescription, they make pretty good reading glasses. So I took care of the Buffalo and the Studebaker, and it came to Marblehead.
Yeah, he did all that.
I'll save the best for last. I'm amazed at the number of people that I see here tonight. And I have every right to talk about historical societies. I'm married to one. And about 40 years ago, a fellow by the name of Dick Jury was a county legislator in the town of Salisbury where we live. And Dick came to the house one night and he said, Elaine, I can get the Frisbee house from the county for $1 if you will restore it. If you will take charge of the restoration. Obviously she couldn't do it alone. And so 40 years ago, she started the restoration of the Frisbee house, which was built in 1805. Huh?
Yeah, 1805.
1805. And I can remember, I was the youngest guy in the Historical Society at the time, and I was 55. And I'm going down the roof carrying pieces of the chimney. And this is a 2.5-story center entrance colonial. And I'm thinking, what in the world am I doing? And I had sinus problems, and so they sent me down cellar to clean out the cellar, which had a leaking sewer. And it was, oh boy, it was something else. It's now the most beautiful house that you can just imagine. It's on the National Register. I heard some pretty fancy numbers, $73,000 in your savings account. You know what ours is? You any idea?
It's
20?
close to 12,
12? Yeah. But
but we think
we
we're
have a
rich.
bathroom. It's all beautifully done. It's all back to the original colors. Elaine set it on fire once. In her infinite wisdom, she called the fire department and said, send me one fireman. And so one fireman came over. She was burning paint off with a paint gun, and one fireman took care of the smoke, and it wasn't a disaster. But anyway, it now has a furnace. As a matter of fact, second furnace. It was a 2-family, now it's a single family. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful home. And we don't have this many people at a meeting, I don't think, and not very often. You folks are very fortunate. And I was quite taken aback by how well you're doing and the support that you have. And it's worth doing. It ties the whole town together. It really does. People take more pride in their homes. They find out more about the history and the thing, and it's a good thing to do. Now, probably one of the last things that I had to do with Doc was, I'm an ex-Navy pilot. I flew Super Constellations in the Navy, 4 engines, 13,000 horsepower. And I had a lot of experience. I worked for Beach Aircraft Corporation, and I was flying all their airplanes and delivering them and doing with customers and hauling senators and Mrs. Beach and all kinds of things. And one time I brought a Queen Air back, which is a twin-engine airplane that carried up to 10 people. And I landed in Turners Falls and later delivered it to Boston, where they put ferry tanks in the airplane.
No, I'm going outside.
That's right. And they fly it to Europe. And so while it was there, we were having a little get-together at Louis Pratt's place over in Berniston. And some of the people that were there was Doc and Carolyn, my mother, and John and, what was John Denson's wife?
Kitty.
Kitty, John and Kitty Denson. And so I said, how would you guys like to ride in a brand new airplane? And, oh, they thought that'd be pretty good. So we went over to Turners Falls. And we all got in the airplane, and I fired this thing up. Now, you probably can tell I like to talk and like to visit and like to do something funny if I can occasionally. And I reached up and I turned the switch for the speaker system in the airplane, and I intended to give my Shelley Berman speech. Anybody ever heard of Shelley Berman?
Yes.
Yeah. So I start in and I say, good evening, folks. This is your captain speaking, and I'm starting off on this stuff like this. And I happened to look out, and all the people in the office window in the thing, or the window were looking like this, and I looked up at the switch, and I was broadcasting outside the airplane with John Denson on board. He was, at that time, he was the editor of the New York Herald Tribune. So anyway, we took off. And Doc is riding in the co-pilot seat. I'm in the pilot seat, and the rest of them are in the back. And you could close the cabin off, but the door was open. So anyway, we're flying at about, 3,000 or 4,000 feet, and we flew up 91 to Brattleboro and did a swing around Brattleboro. And it was an eventful flight for me, because I couldn't keep Doc's hands off the control. He'd grab a throttle, he'd grab the mixture, yeah, he was just all over that. What's this for? Doc, leave it alone. And anyway, that was, I don't think I spent much more time with him after that. I know. One of the last things I did, I think it was after he passed, that you hired Bill and I to rent the farm. And do you live in the farm?
Yes.
Yeah, there was a guy that lived there before you, remember?
Belker.
Who?
Belker. I don't, doesn't matter.
Well, anyway, Bill and I were building a cabin over by East Burke, or no.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Berkshire East.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, Berkshire East. Bill and I were building a cabin, and Doc's tenant built us the fireplace. And that, my recollections of Doc.
Okay,
Okay?
okay.
Thanks for
Thank you,
listening.
Jack. Yeah.
Thank
I would like to say that this mention of the boat, which was out in my garage here,
Thank you.
and somehow he had a pulley system, and the Studebaker top was already on it, and he had engineered this mechanism with a pulley so that he could raise the whole boat up, get underneath it, and paint it, and then put it back down on the trailer when he wanted to use it. He was very, very inventive, so to speak, huh, Jack?
Well, yes, but what I thought you were gonna say is every time somebody came, you started it up.
And another thing about going to Whitingham with the Jeep and the boat, we'd be up there, my mother and I would be cooking, and we'd be having picnic. People would come in and out of there with their car and their trailer and everything, take the boat off, and they'd go scooting around, and then in an hour or so, they'd come back, load on the trailer, and leave. Not us. Never worked that way. My father had some kind of a thing on the exhaust thing, so the water wouldn't go in the exhaust thing, and it was a pipe that went up behind the what do you call that, Kevin? Exhaust pipe that went up behind the thing attached to the exhaust, so that it wouldn't get wet in there, so he could back in and practically drive the boat right onto the trailer with no problem. This took all day, and every time it was time to leave, it would be another hour and a half for him to fiddle around, get the trailer in the place, and it was an adventure every week, right, Kevin?
Right.
Okay, Joe,
Yeah.
I want to talk about his inventiveness. If I can come up through, because, your father terrified me. Literally terrified me. I'm Bonnie Lee Amadon. I was raised in the Amadon apple orchard. I can figure out, yeah, okay. And I was a regular visitor in your father's office. I was here a lot. I started out because at 3 years old I got tonsillitis every single summer. And I had to come down here every Saturday to have a shot of penicillin. So I was scared. I didn't want to come, but I knew if I didn't come and get it, as my mother would say, you're gonna be sick all summer, cause you can't stay out of the brook.
Right.
It's like, okay, fine. So, this chair
Yes.
is my friend. Yes, I was in this. I was here. They promised me ice cream. Do you know that it hurt so bad after they took my tonsils out that I couldn't even eat the ice cream? You'd try to swallow and your throat would go boom, and it's like, go ahead and try it. You can't. Oh, it was awful. However, I did have to have my tonsils out after 3 summers of penicillin shots because I got tonsillitis every summer. And then I went to school, and I was up at the schoolhouse on the top of the hill with my friends, Judy Elwell, Gary Root, and some guy called Freddie, but I can't remember his last name.
DeRusso.
That's the one. Okay, Freddie. And we were on the seesaw. You know, it's like, okay, this is fun. And Gary and I get up here, and Judy and Freddie are down there, and they kind of bump it a little bit on the ground. Well, about that time, I was letting go because I needed to grab on in the back here, but I didn't. I went on the ground. And I broke my arm.
Oh dear.
It was, oh, it hurt. Oh, it hurt. So I, you know, keep a good face. Everybody, are you all right? Oh, yes. I'm fine. I'm fine. So I ride the bus home. And the bus driver calls my mother and says, I think there's a problem with Bonnie Lee. You better pick her up at Denison's as soon as we get there. Okay. She's there. She says, I think we need to go see Doc Olson. It's like, oh no, I'm all right. I know I am. It's like, no, you're not. Okay. Off to the doctor's. He kind of looks at me and goes, oh, well, what have you done? Well, I fell off a seesaw. Okay. So he progresses to, ow, ooh. He says, I think we need to set your arm. Okay, so he gets out the plaster of Paris and proceeds to take this little 7, 8-year-old arm and put a cast on it from here up to here. Okay, all right, I got it. And we're waiting for it to dry. And he says, you know, your bones have telescoped together, and we've got to get them to come apart somehow. Oh, okay. I don't know what he's talking about. Well, he proceeds to get a wire. It's like, okay. He's taking this wire and he's moving the wire around. He wraps it around my cast like this, and it's all of a sudden he takes it and makes a hook at the bottom. And then he goes, okay, I think that'll work. And he goes out to your garden and comes in with a rock.
Yeah.
A beautiful, round, beautiful rock. And progresses, starts to make a wire hook or carrier for the rock. All right. He gets that done. Puts the hook on there. Hooks it onto here. It's like, ugh. Traction, big time, with a rock. I'm going, oh. He says, that'll do it. Now you gotta wear this all while you're up. You can take it off at night, but you have to keep it on all day long. Oh, that was so painful. Oh, did that hurt. So I get a little bit better and I'm going, okay, I'm going to school. So I go to school and Mrs. Root is my teacher. And we are very quiet one day in the classroom. And that arm just starts aching. Oh my God, it aches. And I'm just going, oh, I gotta get that rock off. Oh, I got to. So I flip it off and it hits the floor. Bang! Absolutely quiet room until that rock hit the floor. Poor Mrs. Root jumped a mile, looked at me and said, "Buddy, don't you ever do that again." Gee, I didn't mean to do it. I mean, it hurt so bad. And everybody looked at that wire contraption on my arm that held the rock, that actually pulled the bones apart, so my arm healed correctly. Just, yeah, right. So you think your boat was bad. You have no idea how many comments I got on wearing a rock on my cast.
No, I don't.
So between the rest of the things that happened on the farm, one of the days we had to bring my brother down because he cut off the top of his thumb. Oh, my poor mother. And I'm riding in the truck holding the towel around the thumb because, you know, it's like, oh my God, you gotta keep it. Well, they got down here and as my mother said, your father looked at it and said, well, we don't need that anymore. Took the scissors and cut the top of the thumb right off. Mother almost fainted. Her brothers had to take her out. He said, "Go, Anna Marie, you can't stay in here. Obviously, you're not handling this well." So, my brother does have a thumb. It cut it off right above the root on the nail, and so it grew back. It's not quite like the other one, but it's there. It's there. So that and I was one of those 5 kids.
Yes.
In the tonsil chair. Indeed. And there were so many other little accidents that happened that we were very familiar with this house at a
Got it.
very young age.
Got it, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I don't know you. Where were you living? Where's the farm?
In Halifax,
Okay.
Amadons, Appalachia.
Oh, okay, yes, that's right.
Right there.
Yes, okay.
Yes, it's not that anymore, but
Yes.
it was.
Yes, I know that, up on.
Yeah, Sue.
Franklin Hill Road.
I'm Sue Roberts, married into the Roberts family who spend a lot of time here. The last
I picked up.
Roberts baby to be born was 1957. And 40-year-old mother having her 6th child in labor, had to wait for the chores to be done. And Bertha called and said, Harold called and said, "I'm in labor." And Doc said, "I'll race you to the hospital, get going." Doc won. And Dean was born in the hospital,
Yeah.
not on the Brook Road, one of those corners.
He was born on the Brook Road?
No, he
Oh,
wasn't.
okay.
He made it to the hospital.
Well, that brings another story in my mind. Is I was staying here for some reason 2 times, and my water broke. I was pregnant, ready to go. He says, "Well, I'll take you." So we went in the Jeep down around the Brook Road, and I twice made it, delivered the whole bit.
I'm Gail.
Yeah, Gail.
I'm Gail Johnston, and Doc Olson delivered me in 1950 in one of the mill houses on
Yeah.
Church Street in Grisaville.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you know?
Yeah.
Yep.
he did.
Good, Gail.
I fell off a grapevine. I was swinging on a grapevine and landed on my wrist. And My mother didn't believe that my wrist was hurting. She thought I was just not wanting her to go to work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So the next morning, I'm still walking around holding my wrist. She said, well, I guess I'll take you up to Doc Olson's, see if it's broken. I don't think it is, but. So we came up and Carolyn said, oh, he's not here right now. He's up at the dump shooting rats. And I was only probably 7, and I'm thinking, what kind of doctor is my mother at the dump shooting rats? So we went to the dump, and I'll never forget, there he was with this very big gun shooting rats, and that was his relaxation, was to
Yeah,
go to the dump
exactly.
and shoot rats.
Did he fix your arm?
And he put a cast on my arm, and it seems to be fine.
I wonder if they got a shot of Trump.
You didn't get a rock on it, huh?
No,
No
no,
rock.
it wasn't displaced, it was just needed a cast.
Huh?
I don't know if I should try to tell a story, but my association with Dr. Olson was what I call sort of intermittent. I was a substitute for, well, I did help with the tonsillectomies, and I also worked in the office. And when I took this office position, I was new. I never had done that. In my nursing career, I never done office nursing. So Carolyn called me this day, and Joan is in nursing school in Maryland, and she said that she wanted to like to go down and visit her for a week. Would I substitute for her in the office? So I said, okay. I was looking forward to that. I didn't know what was going on. So anyway, I presented myself at the office and everything went fine. Till this day, I look out the window and these 2 guys are coming down the street. One's got the hold of the other one, kind of leading them. Drunker than a skunk. And they're coming, and I looked at one of them and he was literally covered in blood. And the other one is bringing him to the office. So I opened the door and they come in. Doc took a look at him. Well, what happened to you? Well, they were up at the hotel drinking, and things got out of hand. And the one that was leading the one who was injured, it seems he beat up the one. Beat up the other one. So then he was bringing him to the doctor. Beat him up. Now wait a minute. So Doc looks at me and he kind of winked. And oh my God, what a mess. And he said, he proceeded, I figured he's going to lay them out lavender. Sure enough, he pretended he was vaginal. And he said, you drink too much. He said, that's your problem. You're too much of a drunk. And he said, and you don't know nothing. He says, so anyway, neither one of them said a word to him. Oh, he laid them out loud. And we were the doctor, her head is rich blood supply. He's got a cut of a laceration in his side and bleed like the dickens. Oh, he had me holding it. He apparently went through a bleeder, and he had me pressure on that while he's trying to. Oh God, it was a circus, I'm telling you. That was a new experience for me. Oh gosh. But it amused me that he was going to teach them also. Oh, yeah. He wasn't overly gentle, I'll tell you, doing all that stitching.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Wheeler. You might be able to guess who I was named after.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like having 9 months, my parents could have come up with a name, but they said if they didn't, that I'd be named after the doctor's wife. So I ended up Carolyn. I was born at home in Shelburne,
And I think if I dug around in the pictures, there's probably a picture with Doc Olson pretending to take me out of his black bag. We used to come here, you just come and sit in the waiting room until it was your turn, and then he'd take care of you. And I had one brother that was quite a lot older and one that was just a year older, and the oldest one had his adenoids out. At the same time, the younger one had his tonsils out, and they stayed here at Doc Olson's overnight, I guess. When it was my turn, by then he went to the hospital, so I had to spend a night in the hospital. So he took care of us. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a couple Doc Olson stories. 2 weeks before start of first grade, 6 years old, horsing around, broke my wrist. Hard to believe. Puts takes the x-rays, puts the cast on. As I'm going out, John Caswell is coming in with his right wrist broken. So for the first month of Colrain school, John has his right hand cast, I have my left hand cast. We can't go on the slippery slide, we can't go on the jungle gym. We had to just sit there during recess. 8 months later, there's 4 of us are getting our tonsils out at the Farron. Franny Jaguar, Dave Gilderdale, myself, and Mike Sheridan. Doc comes in the next day, he says, "Oh yeah, you're all good, you can have ice cream." We thought, great. Well, there was a nurse there who shall remain nameless, but may have been related to my mother through marriage, says to me, "You're too fat, you don't get any ice cream." And she gave it to the other 3. Well, Doc Olson came back in, and I told him what happened. He went out and got me 2 ice cream. And when the nurse came in, I let her know I got 2. About 5 years later, my brother Matt was born. And he was born with a cyst right here and a cord around his neck. And after about 3 weeks, Doc said to my mother, "We got to do a little surgery." So I went with my mother to the Farron, and Doc gave me the ether, slit it, pulled it right out, benign, no problems, and Matt's now 65. You guys are 65? No, but they were afraid that it was going to be something that would cause him problems. Doc said, "Nah, don't worry about it." So I'm home from college, out here talking, and Doc gets a call from Gloria Pike, up on the hill. She's got this damn German Shepherd. They got into porcupines. And he said, "I've got some ether around here, we'll go help her out." He'd had his stroke then, he couldn't drive. So I drove him up. He didn't tell me I was going to end up taking all the quills out. And he takes the ether, and this is his big badass German Shepherd dog. And he gives a little bit of ether, and he take out the ones, and then he says, "Now you got to open the mouth and get the ones down the throat." As I did, the dog started, wait a second, throws a little more ether on it. Meanwhile, the wind's blowing towards me, and I'm getting Doc, I don't know. He says, "Oh yeah, just reach in there." Okay, got them all out. 2 weeks later, I'm sitting at home, my mother, get a phone call. Her dog got in the porcupine again. And he said, "We're going up a second time. You willing to do it?" I said, "Sure." So we go up, do the same thing. About 2 weeks later, we get another phone call. He says, "You going up?" And I said, "Only with a 22. And he says, "Yep, that's the dumbest dog we've ever seen. We're just not going to do anything with it." And we didn't go up the 3rd time because the dog, if you get a dog that gets in a porcupine, it's going to keep doing it. So, but he was always the consummate caregiver to everybody. Didn't make any difference with it. And he didn't blame the dog. He blamed Gloria. And she, because they wouldn't keep the dog chained up. And the dog, there obviously were porcupines up there, so. Yep, fond memories of the dock. And there's some stories I just can't tell, I mean, it's just, we probably shouldn't.
Oh, tell them.
No, no, there's some stories that shouldn't be told. Right, Kenny?
How about you boys out there? Any words of wisdom you wanna pass on?
You must have some
I am.
stories.
One, I can give a little context to birth at homes. I'm Jim Purrington, Wilson Hill Purrington. And the first 6 of us, me and 5 siblings that were born through 1954, were all delivered at home by Doc Olson. And the young guys, Ken, Bob, the one 1956 and after, were all delivered at the hospital. So he made the transition, I think Doc Olson made the transition from
Yeah.
home delivery to hospital delivery right around 1955.
Oh, okay, good.
That's my input. Thank you.
Very short fishing story. We're up to Catamount fishing with Ross Donaldson one time. We were standing on the dam side by side, and he cast it out like this with me standing beside him, and he got the hook right about there. Broke the line, and the bottle went flying out in the water, and the hook stayed in my back. So we got back down to his house, because I was staying over at his house, and his mother called my mother and said, well, I'll take him down to Doc Olson. So we came down here and pushed the hook through and clipped it off and pulled it out, gave him the 2 pieces. Says, here, take these down to Freddie, he'll weld it back together for you. So one other short story. We got a piece of property, farm has a piece of property up on Stone Hill, which is across the river from Adamsville, pretty steep. So we took a family hike up there one winter, and on the way back down, it was, as I remember it, I was in 1st grade. It was kind of a trough, and so we decided it'd be a great place to slide down on our rear ends. So on the way down, my pass down, I hit something pretty hard and it hurt pretty bad. And got down to the bottom, and Dad said, well, suck it up. Quarter of a mile walk out to the car and get back home, and I look at my ski pants, I got a hole in them, I take those off, my britches got a hole in them, my long johns got a hole in them, and my rear end's got a hole in it. So we came down to see Doc Olson, and as I recall, he gave me 6 shots. I suppose maybe there were 4 of them were Novocaine and a penicillin shot and probably a tetanus shot. But he dug a sliver out of my buttock. It was just about that big. So he did surgeries here as well. Didn't do them all in the hospital. I actually still have the sliver, because my mother saves everything. Gave it to me in a little plastic bag with a slip of paper that said, "Sliver from Bob's rear."
I've got one more to add to needles and boys. Carlton came in for his smallpox vaccination at age 5, which means putting a bubble here and then taking a needle and sort of laying it on 8 or 10 times. Doc got through the first 5 times, Carl got off the table and headed out the door. Doc was right behind him, grabbed him, brought him back in, set him on the table, and started all over, and so he ended up with 2 vaccinations.
Well, it's a very interesting meeting all the way around, and everybody's comments are very, very appreciated and charming. How about you, Dick? You got anything to say? memory-wise?
I might have one or two.
I thought you would.
Well, nobody has talked about his Oldsmobile 98s, which hammered the roads of this town and surrounding towns at a very high rate of speed, from one customer to another. And we were one of his customers on a regular basis, and I was one of his customers, and being inquisitive, one of his accidents, he just ran off the road. He's probably asleep, who knows what he went off there. And that was a big deal because we had to haul the big Oldsmobile out of the brush. But then at school, and I think it was either 7th or 8th grade, I noticed that he had a dent in his car. And I said to him, I said, Dr. Olson, how did you get the dent in that car? And he said, young man, that's why little boys should be seen and not heard. And I've never forgotten that. I've never forgotten it to this day.
Okay. Very good.
He almost got my tonsils, but not quite. He came within a week. Because I had tonsillitis twice before graduation from high school. And the second time he said, one more shot of tonsillitis here and you're in my office. And I was so scared to death that I think the infections were scared to come here. I still have my tonsils.
Yes, Mike.
Well, I have a quick one, but it's not about Dr. Olson. It's about Dr. Galvo in Sheldon Falls. When we first came up here in 1969, we were cleaning out the pond. We had a pond, and there was lots of poison ivy. So I said, I'm not allergic. I was in the Boy Scouts, and I never got it. Other people got it. Tony didn't get it. We were with shorts on, and I got a worst case of poison ivy that my system had changed. And I had, it was all in my mouth, all on my body. It was terrible. So I went to Dr. Galvo in Sheldon Falls and took care of it. He gave me this medicine that was real smelly. And you put it on, and I don't know what it was, but it did help. There was oatmeal, I think, in it, and an old-fashioned recipe. And that was that, and we left, and he was very nice. And anyway, time goes by, and we're fixing up our house, and they were taking some of the wood off the building, because we had it was rotted. And all of a sudden, I was in sneakers, and I walked around the property, and I put my foot right through a nail that went right into my foot. Bad. So anyway, we'll go to Dr. Galpo again, and there was two fellas that lived in a cabin. I don't know whether it was in Heath or wherever, and they had a gas refrigerator, which we never heard about. So anyway, when we went to see him this time for the nail in the foot, he said, "I thought you were dead." because he saw it, he read it in the paper, and he said, two guys, and so he said, "I thought you were dead."
Oh,
Yes.
Joan, I'd like to say one more thing about the affection that we have for Dr. John, and we did.
Yes.
We cannot leave this room without equal affection for your mother.
Oh, absolutely. They were a pair,
She was a beautiful lady.
a team they were. Yeah. Now, there's a very interesting piece of equipment sits right off this table. And for the life of me, Muriel can't figure it out. And if she can't figure it out, I certainly can't. I don't know what it is. It's been around the office for 50 years. But if anybody has any kind of engineering ideas, it's right here with the top off the thing. The next to it is the autoclave that my mother would wrap all the bandages in once a week and put them in the autoclave and whatever they, however she did that, sterilized them. And they're good for another week. And so that was part of that. But this other piece of equipment, I can't for the life of me figure out what it is. Can you, Chris? How about you boys out there? Take a look. I don't know if it's electrical or a battery or what it is.
Oh, that's looks like a battery. That?
Yeah, that.
I don't know. Never seen one.
I don't know what it could be and what you'd use it as a battery. I just can't figure it out.
What's that all around then?
That's a sterilizer for his bandages.
Oh. Bring it to the hospital, they'll tell you.
I don't know. No, they wouldn't know about that today.
No longer. More people in this room.
And I might add upstairs in Muriel's part of where my father's office was the x-ray machine. So anybody that needed an x-ray, he had it right here. And he could take the x-ray, develop it. And then downstairs, he had a little lab. And if you needed to check a urine for something or a blood count for something, he'd draw the allotted specimen, put them in the centrifuge, and pretty soon he had an answer.
Joan, you said he used to go down the back stairs with the tonsils. What did he do with the tonsils?
Put them in a jar and preserved them. They were on the shelf if you ever wanted to come.
Labeled.
I don't remember the label.
Oh, God.
Joan, did you have brothers or sisters?
Oh, no.
So was it tricky for you to, your parents are working here and you had to go and like read a book off in the corner to be out of their way, or how did that work?
Me?
Uh-huh.
What'd I do?
Yeah.
I'd sit at the top of the stairs and I'd inch my way down and talk to the patients. What are you here for? What are you blah, 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 blah. I was probably 3 years old, climbing their laps and figure it all out, but past that, I didn't go in the waiting room after they moved to the other part of the porch.
All of the doctors had their families in the offices. In Shelburne, Gallows lived upstairs, Temples lived out back, Oxman's lived up
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Not just He's got like 5 years.
Yeah.
My mother.
Joan, I'm curious about the house. It has kind of a, I don't know,
know,
turret or something on the top. It's different than the other houses in town.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Not really. It's wallpapered. It was always wallpapered, that particular room. I don't know why. There was some speculation about Mrs. Cram needed to be put up there for a given length of time. I don't know anything valid about that. But we papered that room, remember, Kevin? Belden?
Yeah.
We did that. And it's still papered, but it's not functional. I don't use it. I don't go up there anymore, but I don't know what it was really used for. That's the only room that was papered up in the attic.
And Belden, I think, is next month you're gonna come to my.
Yes, I was gonna mention that, by the way, to everybody. Our May meeting, second Thursday, is going to be at the, and I've got it written down, right.
Wheelview Farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, probably a lot of you know it as the Stanley Reynolds Farm. He was my grandfather, and we've had the farm since 1979. And the building that he used to keep pigs in is now a farm museum. We pretty much collected all the stuff that we cleaned out of my mother's house and barn, John's mother's house and barn, my grandparents' house, barn, attic, cellar, and cleaned it off and put it out there. So I invite everyone to come there and bring your friends and look at the farm museum. We have a player piano. If you like, you can sing along with the player piano. That came from Sue Samrisky, actually, Hank Samrisky. So try to make it to that meeting.
Thank you for remembering that. I meant to mention it.
What is the date?
Second Thursday, let's see, do I have the date? It's the second Thursday in May, and that'll be May 11th. And so we'll have a meeting at 7 o'clock as we did tonight, and the program there will be about the museum and the Reynolds Wheeler firm. So you're all welcome to come. It'll be fun.
Yeah, there's plenty of room, so
Yeah,
bring your
yeah.
friends.
Well, thank you all for coming. It was all very interesting and fun to see everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.